The doctrine binder is sitting on the debrief table when I walk in, and I do not know yet what Colonel Vane is going to find inside it. I take my seat near the back, where junior NCOs go when they are present for a debrief they do not have a real right to be at, and I set my notebook on my knee, and I watch the colonel's aide stack the after-action packet in front of each chair. I am 24 years old, and I have been carrying something since 09:30 that morning, which is approximately when I handed Warrant Officer Lena Carrick a perimeter logging clipboard and watched her take it without a word. And I have been trying to figure out ever since whether what I did counts as a thing a man is allowed to move past. It was Colonel Vane's order. I want to be clear about that, and also clear that I am not sure it matters. The morning brief was 0600, in the operations tent at FOB Kessler North. 22 of us. Entry team plus support. The objective was a hardened compound 2 kilometers east, flagged as a mid-level cache site by a 3-day aerial package. The entry plan was Colonel Vane's: 2 breach lanes, a primary team of 6 engineers through the main gate, a support element of 8 at the eastern wall, and a perimeter security rotation logged by 2 NCOs who would hold outside and run comms relay. Simple, clean. He had drawn it on the board the night before with a black marker, and it looked clean on the board. Warrant Officer Carrick was at the table when I arrived. She was not assigned to the FOB. She had come in with the division advisory element 4 days earlier, riding in a vehicle I had seen but not paid attention to. She was small, slight, with close-cropped hair gone gray at the temples, and she wore her kit the way people wear kit when they have worn a lot of it over a long time. Without drama, everything exactly where it needs to be, nothing adjusted for display. I did not know her name. I did not know what she did. She had a mug of coffee and a small green notebook in front of her, and she was writing in the notebook when the colonel began, and she did not look up when he reached the breach lane assignments. He called her name third from the bottom of the list. Carrick, he said. Perimeter logging, North Post. I need people who can move fast and carry weight on the primary entry, not a range safety officer filling a slot. She looked up. She did not argue. She did not blink. Understood, she said. She wrote something in the green notebook and closed it. I was sitting 2 chairs to her right and I heard it and I said nothing. I told myself it was not my brief to correct, and that was true, and I have been living with that truth since. When the brief ended and people were gearing up outside, I found her at the vehicle line and I handed her the perimeter clipboard, the laminated sheet, and the grease pencil, and the nylon cord, because that was my job that morning, and I was doing my job. She took it from me. She did not look at the clipboard, not right away. She looked at the compound in the distance, the low ochre walls above the dun flat of the valley, shimmering in the early morning heat. She turned the clipboard over in her hands once, the way someone turns over a tool they are deciding whether to keep. "You been inside that compound before?" she said. "No, ma'am." "The north exterior wall, has anyone walked the drainage slope on that side?" I told her I didn't know. She nodded, like she'd expected that answer, pulled out the green notebook again, wrote something brief, and walked toward the northern perimeter post without looking back. I went back to my assigned support position at the eastern wall, and I did not think about her for the next hour and a half. I thought about the entry plan. I thought about the 2 breach lanes. I thought about the heat, which by 0900 had already become a factor of its own, pressing flat on everything. The primary breach team went in at 0841. I was at the east wall with SSGT, Morales and 2 others, comms up, watching the gate. The first 20 minutes were unremarkable. The colonel was at the command post 40 meters back, and his radio operator gave position updates every 4 minutes. They were moving through the forward courtyard clean. At 0903, the primary team leader, Sergeant First Class Dorn, came up on the net, and his voice had the particular flatness that trained people get when they are managing something they have not yet named. He said the team had encountered a pattern of disturbed soil at the inner courtyard threshold that was not consistent with foot traffic, and they needed to halt. The colonel said, "Can you reroute?" Dorn said, "Negative. East wall is collapsed on the inner side. We're in a channel." The colonel said, "Give me a read on the pattern." There was a pause. Dorn described what he was seeing. 5 irregular depressions in a rough arc, variable spacing, the smallest one tight to the wall base. He said it did not match anything in the breach intel package. He said the path back was behind them, and the path forward was the pattern, and neither was a good option. The colonel said, "Stand by," and then Warrant Officer Carrick came up on the net. Her voice was flat and unhurried, the same way it had been when she said, "Understood," at the brief. The same way it had been when she asked about the drainage slope. She said, "Kessler North, chalk wire. I'm at North Perimeter, looking at the exterior face of the inner courtyard wall. I have a read on the pattern. Request permission to pass." The colonel said nothing for 2 seconds. Then, "Go ahead." She said, "The pattern Dorn described is 6 devices, not 5. The 6th is at the wall base, partially occluded by loose rubble, consistent with a command wire tail running under the lower threshold. The arc is sequential. They're staged to walk an entry team forward into the command wire trigger. Do not move forward. The secondary access is through a maintenance panel in the northwest corner of the inner courtyard, approximately 11 meters behind Dorn's current position, left-hand inner wall. Panel is rusted steel, 1.2 meters wide. There is no secondary threshold. The lane is clear." Silence on the net, a full second of it. Then Dorn said, "How do you have eyes on the inner courtyard from the north perimeter?" She said, "I don't. I have eyes on the drainage slope and the exterior wall face. The disturbance pattern on the outside tells me the placement pattern on the inside. The slope drainage runs under the inner threshold. The wire would have to follow the drainage channel or it can't reach the arc. It follows the channel. The maintenance panel was in the aerial package logged as structural debris. It's not structural debris." Another silence. Colonel Vane said, "Chalk wire, confirm your read on the maintenance panel location." She said, "Confirmed. I located it on the aerial package last night and walked the exterior sightline this morning from North Post. The panel is there." The colonel said, "Dorn, find the panel." Dorn went off the net for 40 seconds. 40 seconds is a long time when 6 men are standing in a channel between a collapsed wall and a 6-device arc. I was at the east wall, and I had stopped breathing at some point, and I was becoming aware of this fact. Morales had his radio pressed to his jaw, and his expression was the expression of a man doing arithmetic he doesn't want to finish. Dorn came back on the net. "Found it," he said. It took 11 minutes for the primary team to back out through the maintenance panel and clear the compound perimeter. When Dorn called clear, he said, "Chalkwire's count was right. EOD will find 6. Command wire runs exactly where she said. She had the channel mapped before we entered." The colonel said nothing. I looked north, across the flat, toward the perimeter post. The distance and the heat shimmer made her a shape rather than a person. She was standing, not sitting. She had the green notebook in her hand, and she was looking at the compound wall the same way she had been looking at it all morning. EOD went in at 11:30. Their count at 13:45 was 6 devices. The command wire ran under the lower threshold exactly as she had described, following the drainage channel, reaching the outer arc in the sequence she had named in the same order she had named them. The maintenance panel was clear. All 6 men on the primary team walked out the way she had told them to walk out, and none of them were hurt, and the debrief was called for 1400. Colonel Vane ran the debrief the way he ran everything. Methodical, no visible emotion, each element in sequence. He went through the timeline. He acknowledged the deviation from the breach plan. He asked Dorn to walk through the halt decision, and Dorn did it carefully, and the colonel listened without interrupting. Then he asked the S3 for the breach doctrine reference number used in the entry plan. The S3 said, "Standard Lane Clearance Protocol, sir, FOB Kessler North Doctrine, CEB/ECR7. The colonel said, "Pull the document." His aide opened the doctrine binder and set it in front of him. CEB/ECR7, current revision, tabbed, laminated cover. The colonel opened it to the front matter. I was near the back of the tent, but the tent was not large, and I could see the binder without difficulty. He read the front matter. It did not take very long. When people read something that reorganizes what they thought they understood about a situation, there is a way the body goes still that is different from ordinary stillness. I have seen it before, and I saw it then. He said, "Who reviewed the classification supplement in Carrick's personnel packet when she attached to this command?" Nobody answered. He said, "I am asking a specific question." The S1 NCO said, carefully, that the advisory element had arrived under a standing coordination order, and that individual personnel supplements had not been individually processed at the FOB level. He said it the way a man says something he already knows is not going to be sufficient. The colonel looked at the front matter for another moment. Then he said, "The primary author of this doctrine is Warrant Officer Lena Carrick, current revision, and the 2 prior revisions." He turned one page. "She also holds the breach training certification for 3 of the 6 engineers on the primary entry team this morning. She trained them to use a standard she wrote. We deviated from that standard in the entry plan. She identified the deviation from the north perimeter post." No one said anything. The tent was very quiet in the way tents in the middle of the afternoon are quiet, the heat pressing down through the canvas, everything perfectly still. He closed the binder. He picked up a pen, and he wrote one line at the bottom of the duty roster. He set the pen down. He said, "Debrief is concluded." He did not look at her when he said it. She was sitting across the table and slightly to his left, and she had her hands flat on the surface in front of her, and she was looking at the same fixed middle distance she had maintained all afternoon. Not at the colonel, not at the binder, not at anyone in the room. She occupied a very particular kind of stillness. Not patience exactly, and not suppression. It was the stillness of someone who has already done the work and is waiting for the administrative record to catch up. People began to file out. I gathered my notebook, and I stood, and I passed the colonel's table. He had covered his written line with the binder. I did not read it. I never found out what it said. In the weeks that followed, her classification supplement was routed to the FOB Kessler North Command Element, and I saw the routing slip in the S1 pile one morning with her name on it. The entry team ran 2 more operations that month, using a revised version of the lane clearance protocol. Both operations came out clean. No one said her name at either debrief. But the protocol was different, and the difference was in the document, and the document had her name at the top. I think about the clipboard, the laminated sheet, and the grease pencil, and the nylon cord. I think about the way she took it from my hands, without looking at me, and turned it over once, and asked whether anyone had walked the drainage slope on the north exterior. I think she already knew, right then, what the north post overlooked. I think the green notebook already had a sketch of the exterior wall and the aerial drainage line. I think she went to perimeter logging because it was the position that told her everything she needed to know, and she used the morning to confirm it, and by the time Dorn's voice came up on the net, she had already found the 6th device and located the maintenance panel and run the channel geometry in her head, and the only question was whether she would be allowed to say it out loud. She was, barely. I handed her the clipboard. That is what I did that morning. That is the part I carry.